Welcome everyone to Breaking the Binary. I'm Jinx Auger, and today we will be hearing about the experiences of queer and androgynous folks and how they express their gender. But first, I would like to teach you some basic terminology of the LGBT+ community, along with some history on gender expression. All of this and more on Breaking the Binary. First, let's look at some LGBT terms used in our community today. Gender nonconforming is a term given to people who don't conform with the gender norms that are expected of them. The term usually refers to gender expression or presentation. It can also refer to behavior, preferences, and roles that don't conform to gender norms. In order to understand non-binary gender identities better, it's important to understand the difference between gender identity and gender expression. Gender identity refers to a person's clear sense of their own gender. It's your innermost concept of self as a man, woman, a blend of both, something distinctly different, or none of the above. Put it simply, it's how you perceive yourself and what you call yourself. Gender expression is how you express your identity. You may present yourself to the world as masculine, feminine, androgynous, or in any other way. This can also change over time or by circumstance. A person's gender identity and expression are not the same as their sexuality. There are many reasons why you may not be able to express your gender identity in visible ways. Expression is a personal choice based on many things, personal safety being one of the most important. Now let's hear from Emmett Roach as he explains his form of gender expression.
My name is Emmett. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them. You were born the way you were because that's what people are telling you. You're born this way, so you need to be put into this box. When, as a kid, you don't really understand that. You just understand this is the way I feel. Why are you putting me into the box? It really took other queer people to help me step outside of my box, yeah. And to help me stop feeling shoved into that box and stop caring about what generally just anybody thought. There was a point where I had to really stop caring about what anybody thought. Like my family, my parents, my friends, like it was just me. It was me and my feelings that were most important. And my comfortability that was most important out of everything, as long as I wasn't making anyone else uncomfortable or harming anybody, I should say, because I made people uncomfortable, but that doesn't give people a right to like still shove me back into that box to make themselves comfortable, you know? People hate this about me, but I like a femme face and very boring clothes, like very mask clothes. Like that drives people nuts. They do not like it. They're like, you dress so boring, but your makeup's so cute. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't feel, I'm not a fashionista. Like if an outfit comes together and it looks cute, it's cute, but it's mostly just sweatpants, baggy, t-shirts, hoodies. I love that. Wearing makeup and wearing a beard, I could choose not to. I could choose to conform, but I'm queer, I'm here. That's my statement that I'm making by doing that. And even if I'm not outwardly like trying to make that statement, that is what the public sees when I wear those things. A lot of people think that it's not an issue, that there are people in the world that aren't able to express themselves freely, and those people are usually the people who are able to express their gender freely. And it's always an issue when it's still, to this day, causing people to harm themselves and end their lives. Statistics show that people who don't have support in their lives of their transness, or they don't conform to the gender that they were assigned at birth, there's higher rates of self-harm and there's higher rates of suicide. And that's always an issue. At least to me, yeah, like that's harm to a whole group of people. That's always gonna be an issue.
Such a moving story. It's heartbreaking to think about how many queer youths have these thoughts of self-harm over gender expression. If we look at the statistics from the Trevor Project, 45% of LGBTQ youth seriously consider suicide in the past year, including more than half of transgender and non-binary youth. According to the Human Rights Campaign, the increase in anti-trans and drag laws being placed in the U.S. have also a direct impact on the mental health of gender non-conforming youth today. But it isn't like this for everyone. With many indigenous and other non-Western cultures, the concept of a third gender or gender-fluid identities have been recognized and honored for centuries. In some cultures, these individuals were revered as healers and spiritual leaders rather than stigmatized. Their identities were seen as a normal variance in human gender. Examples include, but are not limited to, two-spirited people in Native American culture, Fa'afafina in Samoan culture, Mahu in Hawaiian culture, or Hijra in South Asian culture. No matter what terms people use, we all deserve the right to express our true selves. Let's see what Carlos Anderson has to say about his experience.
This was my birthday outfit. My name is Charles and I go by he, him. Gender expression. Well, for me, I always gravitated to going outside of the social norm. Even as a kid, like I wanted to do stuff outside of the social norm, but you know, since I was living with my parents and they wasn't like conservative or nothing, but they definitely wanted like us, the girl, to be within the norm. But you know, the older I got, the more I'm like, you know, this isn't me. So like slowly I just started to incorporate things that I feel like matter the most to me. And then eventually I just got to this point where I'm like, I don't feel like I need to cater to anyone but myself. So my social norm is basically just existing and like wear whatever I want to, like completely outside of the norm, within the norm. It doesn't matter. As long as I feel comfortable within it, then that's what matters the most to me. Like I would just sneak in, like put on some of my mom's clothes or like some of my dad fits as well, just because like he had like a baggy style and like I was kind of into it, but like also the skinny jeans was a thing. So it was like that style, like a lot of it comes from like me admiring my parents' style. But then also I really was like deep into fashion, but I just did not have the money for it. If you look at it, like a lot of clothes that were made for females was originally made for males. So even if people want to bring up that argument, it's like a skirt was originally made for males. Crop tops were wasn't made for males, but like males was wearing them a lot in the 90s and even before then. So like a lot of things can get easily debunked. Society is definitely something that's still growing, but it's always going to be really negative just because a lot of people are insecure within their self, so they project onto others. Especially like a lot on social media, there are people who like go against social norms daily. Like Jaden Smith, he went against it and everybody was ridiculing him. Like honestly, society just need to get over it. Like, you know, if it's not hurting you, if it's not doing anything to you, why do you care? Simple. Like, why do you care about the next person so much? Like, just you do you, and the other person's doing them. Like, it's not affecting you any kind of way. It's not hurting you. So why do you care so much about what the other guy is doing? If anything, that makes you look more sus than the next person. Girls' clothes definitely does give you a better confidence boost, just because like it makes you feel sexy. When it comes to like more masculine outfits, it's like you're restricted to just pants and shirt. It's like, okay, but like, what if I want to wear like a half shirt with like some baggy pants? You wouldn't be able to find that in the men's section, but you could definitely find it in the women's section. So that's why I say women have a better choice when it comes to styling yourself. With the men's, there's very limited options. Just because society is kind of like, not a scary place, but like, there's definitely moments where like it could be scary. And for me, since I'm, I tend to dress more outside of the social norm, I get looks daily. That's something I'm used to. But there's also moments where like somebody could be following me. And like, lucky enough, I did like a bunch of sports, so like I know how to handle a person. Like, yeah, if you're not a confrontational person, then like, things could get really bad quickly. It's definitely not easy because like, you get looks, and when you're like have like super awareness, you able to like detect like the slightest change in somebody. So with that one, it's like I'm always aware of my surroundings, and like I know where I have to go, so I like always like make sure I focus on that destination. And like if somebody try to like stop me, I just continue walking. It's like it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. But like, to some people, like they want to ruin the other person's day, so like they will do whatever they can. And I'm just like, you know what? You just mad because you're not a baddie like me. Just wear what you want to wear, regardless of what society has to say. If you do what makes you feel comfortable, wear what makes you feel comfortable. Be comfortable within your skin, within your clothes. Hallelujah.
I love seeing people live their truth. It really does take courage to go out there with your heart on your sleeves. Now for the final part of the show, we have Micah with us in the studio today. How are you feeling?
Great. Great. I am. Where else would I rather be?
So first, I would like to know, since we're on the topic of gender expression, would you consider yourself more feminine, masculine? Do you identify with either of those terms?
I don't generally describe myself as either of those terms. I'm just authentically myself. I think sometimes folks get really focused on trying to define themselves so they can better share who they are with other people. But for me, I think a lot of what comes out in my expression is just the interaction that I have with the people that I get to know.
Okay, on that note, how does yourself relate to your gender then?
Well, so I generally do see myself, at least in my own mind, as more masculine, and I use the pronouns that would specifically align to that. I don't put myself in any given box, though. So there's things that I expect in my own reality that I just want to be able to. I want to be able to share with those that I care about.
Yeah, that's important to bring that up, because I think the world sometimes has a way of associating pronouns with putting someone in a box, and not to fall in those trappings.
Certainly, but what's happening now, right, is that there are more people being sensitive and more inclusive in their language, and I think that's where it's important too, because as I've become more accustomed to not using more gender-specific pronouns, I'm hoping that others do too, and it becomes less of a conversation about that and more of a conversation about how we can better understand who this is that I'm actually interacting with.
Well, on that note, how would you describe your experience as an LGBT person?
Well, it's interesting, because if you think about the time when I was growing up and you compare that to today,
yeah,
there's so much in those formative years that might have been challenging. I mean, in Wisconsin in the early 2000s, there was so much debate, and actually, like, legislation defining marriage between men and women, and that actually created, a lot of conversations amongst our community. And also maybe kept some people in the closet than they ultimately needed to. Today, I'm just so proud of where we all are together, and I'm glad that I was able to come along with it.
Yeah, we have moved a long way in a short amount of time. In regards to gender nonconformity, where do you think we are today and how that's viewed?
I think the conversation is important. Understanding who we have around us, understanding what people are experiencing and how we can better be there or be better for these people that we truly care about, I think is important. Unfortunately, some of the discussion seems particularly divisive. So with so much around definitions being used on all parts of this spectrum of maybe opinion, it's really unfortunate that we can't actually just come together and find the best way that we can support our neighbors, family members, and friends.
Yeah, you mentioned the spectrum. So in your time, how has the LGBT plus vocabulary evolved?
Well, so when I'm describing the spectrum, I'm talking about a spectrum of opinions and really how they want to address our LGBTQ plus community. Now, that said, growing up, the letters were probably there, but in general, they weren't ones that we broadly referred to. Almost everyone was talking about just you're gay or you're not gay, right? Like that was the discussion. And now we're far more specific because we want to make sure that we can recognize and share that we recognize these people.
Yes. Okay, so the next question, do you think there's room for improvement when it comes to LGBT rights?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're talking about rights, there's rights that we talk about as a society that just any human being ultimately deserves, and it's usually tied to recognition, the ability to live, breathe, and actually exist and thrive within a community. But one of the things that the LGBT community really seems to get hit by often, right, are these very polar discussions around how does the broader society address people in our community? So things like don't say gay in Florida, or even some of the maybe back and forth debates that are happening within some of the religious institutions are things that are actually very confusing. People in our community also experience, almost everyone in this community has experienced some type of housing insecurity, food insecurity, financial insecurity. These are all things that disproportionately affect our people. And it's why, although we may be more broadly accepted within the broader society, we need to continue with very specific discussions around how do we drive equity for all of us.
A lot of these things are interconnected, and I know we're talking about the LGBT community, but a lot of them overlap, don't they?
I mean, absolutely. One of the things is that if we're going to talk about solving for homelessness in any given community, we should be looking at the LGBT youth who may have experienced housing insecurity because of what might have happened in a familial situation. If we're talking about trying to solve for, like a common discussion right now, solve for financial insecurity because of things like student loans, our community was one that, many people, at least of our age, stepped away from their home communities and found college a way to get away from some of the challenges they had.
So I'm going to change it up a little bit. How can representation help our community?
I mean, representation is always important. Regardless of what we're talking about, if we're talking about the media, if we're talking about organizations that deliver products and services to a marketplace, those teams, those people should represent the communities that they're there to serve. For the LGBT community, especially, we have celebrities and role models that seem to fall in very specific industries and lines of work, and it would be great, right, if we continue to look at that and find maybe broader equity, broader representation in places that we might not have seen it before. Generally, right, we look at the workforce today, and there's so much discussion around how many we have, how many opportunities there are in maybe some of these more tactical roles that might be out there, service industry roles, construction roles, things that might be actually there to that might not require a college education, but actually be something that can make a really good income. And our community, at least in general, hadn't been heavily represented there. I mean, I spent how many years going to all these HVAC conferences, and although in almost every industry there are groups that are tied to the LGBT population, I didn't see one there. And it's one that hopefully, right, we can continue to evolve as we find every opportunity to thrive.
Yeah, because we're here in all spaces.
We should be, right? We should be. And ultimately, one of the challenges is that so many feel that they have to assimilate in their situation, when in reality, if you can bring your authentic and true self in every environment, you're likely more valuable in that environment.
Well, on that note, that follows into the next question. How can people be more progressive when addressing gender and non-gender conforming folks in these spaces?
Progressive is interesting, right? Like, because in general, we all want to make an effort, at least I believe, most people want to make an effort to not offend and be there for other people and make sure that that interaction is good. As the broader standard is moving to gender neutral references to family, to individuals, et cetera, those are all things that we can actually build off of to make sure that they're happening regardless of where you are, say in our country or even the world. It's going to be important because as we continue to learn about these individuals, what we don't want to do, right, is potentially put them back in a box because we didn't recognize who they are. This is, and one of the good things that's happening is that people who are put in situations where they get to help form and educate and support these folks, I think we're all tasked with taking specific training on how we can be more sensitive and then also make sure that we're more inclusive in all of our language.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, next question. Do you feel that mimicking people in your life helps with expressing gender?
It helps with expressing things that you care about. Like if you really want to express yourself, if expressing yourself through gender is one of the things that you want to bring out into the world, certainly you may find role models or others that you may want to seem like and share that, right, and make that part of your identity. But also you see that mimicking or even just modeling certain ways that you may speak, ways that you may show up to work or show up in a meeting or even participate in a class. Like those are things that you can do even beyond just the gender expression.
Yeah, role models really do help. Well, that's all we have for today though, folks. Thank you so much, Micah, for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, this is one of those conversations that is so important.
And thank you for opening your mind to the complexities of gender expression. Have a lovely day.